Hey everybody, based on the apparent interest in my last instrument video where I showed off my very rare Mount Vernon Bach Model 1 alto trombone, I thought I would continue in this kind of series and add more content to my trombone channel by showing off some other horns in my collection that may interest you due to their rarity and customization. And so tonight I'm going to bring to you guys another kind of a rare horn, not as rare as the Model 1, but an instrument you don't see very often. And this is a Bach Mount Vernon Model 45. Now, it's been heavily modified to take on a lot more Bach 50 parts to make it a little bit more playable. The original horn that I purchased on eBay many years ago. It was originally in silver plate and at some point had been used by a school. It was a school-owned instrument and it had been pretty beat up, and obviously it was sold off in auction at one point. And so I purchased the horn. The slide, unfortunately, was almost completely destroyed. It was not even usable. There was nothing on the slide that was truly salvageable. But I was buying it mainly for the bell. And so I think I paid around, I want to say at the time, around $900 for it, which in retrospect I think was pretty good. But of course, as I said, it wasn't a playable instrument. The slide had been already repaired a number of times. As I said, it was a school-owned instrument, and so that whole slide assembly was trashed. And unfortunately, I don't know the original serial number on the instrument to look it up in the card catalog, because enough parts had been replaced that the serial number had been removed. So I don't really know the original serial number. So the slide was gone, and I replaced it with a Model 50 lightweight slide. So this is the nickel silver 50 slide, which I had the lead pipe pulled on it, so I can change the lead pipes. It's not a screw-on. It's just a one that would use a standard kind of O-ring system. And the original 45 slides were 0.547, 0.562, so they were a dual bore slide. And well, I should say some of them were all 0.547, and some of them were the dual bore. This one originally had a dual bore slide, but now it's a 0.562 bore, single bore, both sides. The valve section was okay, but it was very badly damaged with dents, and solder joints had been bent and broken and so forth. And I picked up this Model 50 B3 valve section, I think on one of the trombone forums, from somebody that had sent in their instrument to Greenhoe Custom to have a set of Greenhoe valves installed on their Bach 50. And they were just selling the valve section. I think I picked up the valve section for $250. And so I thought it would do well on this instrument, trying to add the second valve. And it was a functional modern valve system, had all the linkage and everything. So I thought it was a good deal, pick that up. Now we get to the original parts of the instrument. I have the original tuning slide ferrules on both sides, the original tuning slide, which is different than both the Model 42 and the Model 50. It's kind of in between. This side is the same as a Model 50, but this side is somewhere in between. So if you guys ever pick up, or have a chance to pick up, a 45B bell and don't have a tuning slide, make sure you can find one, because they're not that common and they're not compatible with the other 42 or 50 tuning slides. So it's a little bit different. And so let me get you a close-up here. Hopefully it will come across in the video of the engraving or the stamp here. As you can see, it's a Stradivarius Model 45B, and I know it's kind of early in the Mount Vernon years because of the signature, which is more ornate and larger than you'll see on the later ones. And of course, it says Mount Vernon, New York, USA. As you can also see, the silver plate has been removed from this. I had it lightly buffed off from the craftsman here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that built the horn for me. And so he de-dented the bell, which is really in pretty good shape. There were no cracks or major damage to it. So he fixed that up, took off the silver plate. There's still a little bit of silver plate around the rim, but everything else has been taken back down to the raw brass. And trying to see if there's anything else really customizable or customized on this thing. And oh yeah, one of the things that I did do myself is I changed over the Bach metal linkage to this plastic Dubro system. These little parts are, I think it's Dubro B88 is what it is. Anyway, it's a model playing part that you can buy at any hobby store. And the threads are actually compatible with the screws that Bach used. Or I don't know if it's still that way, but the ones they used to use, they were all compatible, so you could buy the ball and socket joints and change out the kind of loud, clanky metal linkage to this plastic, which these parts are all like $1 a piece if they ever wear out, which I doubt that they would if you keep them well maintained and oiled. But also they're a lot more quiet than the metal, which as it wears out, you get that loud, clanky noise. So as I said, this is the 45B. I should say some specs on it is that it's not a 9.5-inch bell. It's a 9-inch bell. They did make Model 50s with 9-inch bells, but this is not a 45 or a 50 flare. It starts off more narrow up here than a 50 and ends not as big as a 50, but bigger than a 42. I've heard some people refer to this as a baritone trombone, meaning that it kind of fills the role between a tenor and a bass. And in the original catalogs, Bach had mentioned that this was a bass trombone designed for shows, like Broadway shows, or just kind of like light studio playing. And this is also, and I'm not sure if it's the first bass trombone, but the Model 45 was, I believe, the first bass trombone model that Bach tried to make back in 1939 and 1938. Because I do know, and I have seen it, there is a 2-digit serial number, Model 45, out there. So in the first 100 trombones he made, he tried to make what he referred to as a bass trombone. And of course, back in 38 and 39, bass trombones were not the big monstrosities that they are today with the big bores and all that kind of stuff. They were a little bit more compact. And so I would have to say, if I was going to compare this to another instrument in its current configuration, you might think of it as maybe like a Conn 73H, 71, 72, 73H, kind of a bell flare. So it's more narrow. It definitely kind of plays like a Conn, but it has a Bach sound, and I use this a lot for maybe chamber playing, some solo playing if it's classical or Baroque solos, and I definitely use this in big bands, which is where it really shines. I think if there's anything else I can tell you about it in this review, it plays a little bit more stuffy than a Model 50, but I think a lot of that has to do with the valves. I'm really kind of a Thayer valve guy, and the rotor valves give me a little bit more back pressure than what I'm used to. But it definitely has some edge to it in the louder dynamics. I definitely would not play this in an orchestra unless I was playing a small symphony piece, maybe a Beethoven, or maybe some classical era work where the tenor trombonists had scaled down their equipment as well. So this is my customized Bach 45B Mount Vernon. We're going to call it a bass trombone because that's the role that it functions in my collection, as a small jazz kind of a bass trombone. It's a pleasure to play. Doesn't have the world's greatest extreme low range down into the low pedals, but it definitely gets the job done. Intonation's a little bit funky on it that you got to watch out for. Once you get it below the F below the staff to about the pedal B flat, it tends to be a little swirly there and a little bit different. Some of the positions are further out than what you expect. Some of them are further in. You just got to get used to it. But otherwise, it plays really well. So anyway, let me give you one more close-up here of the engraving. As I said, I hope it's coming through on the camera. There. So, there we go. If you guys have any questions about this instrument, and I'll try to get around to playing it in some future videos, and you guys can see how it sounds and how it plays. So, anyway, guys, thanks for watching.